shows, it is time to see if we can connect with Malcolm Massey of the UK column. Good evening, Malcolm.
Good evening, Alex. How you doing? Good evening, Lexi.
Fantastic, fantastic. Say hello, Lexi, to Malcolm.
Hello, Malcolm.
Hello.
Everybody's you see, everybody met at when Doomwatch went to the Peterborough Beer Festival.
So you drunk so much, Alex, you couldn't remember.
Well, I think my closing words were mugga-humph-to-muff.
We had to scrape him off the floor.
I tell you what, one of the guys, we did a program called the Peterborough Social, which was a 7-week thing running up to the Cameron Beer Festival, and one of the guys who runs one of the local community pubs around here came in. And he's basically the Crown, which is the top end of Lincoln Road, which is the street outside where we are here. And obviously, because he's a cameraman, he's got a pub full of not only 4 real ale pumps that he's got on and other ordinary stuff besides, but also he has a range of about 4, 5, maybe 6 real ciders. And we had a little meeting up there a couple of weeks ago. One of them tasted like sherbet cider, and I tell you what, fantastic. And the other was a cherry cider. I tell you what, if you'd have put it in a bath for me, that probably would have been enough for me for the evening. It was superb stuff. There's a plug to one of our compadres and assistants. Hello to John at the Crown if you're listening. Anyway, Malcolm, the reason you're on here, it's twofold. We'll get to the documentary later on. But what it was, we have the guys from getoutofdebtfree.org on the show a couple of weeks or so ago. And this inspired you into action. You wrote me a very long email, which we have effectively put up on the show page 24 at doomwatch.com, with the expletives deleted, of course. And I mean, this essentially was you looking at what they were saying about the DVLA, and the assertion is that is it the V5 form? I think basically says at the top of the document, it says just because you, in words, I'm paraphrasing, just because you've got this document doesn't mean you're the owner of the car. You're just the keeper. And that was immediately sort of, right, we're getting into words and wordplay. And, okay, well, if you're not the owner, what do you mean by keeper? And why am I not the owner? I've got the receipt to prove I've owned the car. So, and the Get Out of Debt Free guy's contention was that effectively that form, because you've registered it with the DVLA, you have effectively surrendered that car to them. And one of the reasons behind this being legitimate is these guys can come along and crush your car, and you've got no recourse to suggest criminal damage. And the reason is, in the background, we're effectively saying, well, it's not your car, so you can't complain. Where do you want to start with this one?
Wow, big one, big subject. Let's just get straight into it. Okay, so I don't think it's not creating ownership. I don't think the state has any interest in owning your vehicle. I say that from experience. I deregistered my vehicle 3 years ago. Sorry?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very long process. It was a back and forth situation where I was basically challenging the fact that there is no statute that has wiped away my pre-existing right to travel. Driver is actually a position, as is a registered keeper. You can be a registered keeper and you can own the vehicle at the same time.
Right.
The reason why it says at the top the document is not proof of ownership is because it's got nothing to do with ownership. The DVLA, as they've confirmed to me many times, are not interested in ownership. They don't need ownership of the vehicle to do what they want to that vehicle. What allows them to do what they want to that vehicle is the fact that people are signing their rights away. So they are surrendering something, but they're not surrendering ownership of the vehicle. They're surrendering their rights on that to travel on that road as someone who owns it. We own the road. The roads are public. We own them. We have the right to travel on them. Obviously, everyone has a right to access their own property, right?
Yep.
You see, well, I'll just peel it back and go where I went with my research, right?
Yep.
So the first thing to do is I looked at this document. I want to cover it partially because this isn't my document, and I don't want anyone, whatever, stealing details and stuff. So that's the V5 that everyone's talking about. So we look at the V5, what's on there? There's a DVLA sign, right? DVLA is the authority who owns this document. Let's go and have a look at these guys, right? Yep. So I went into their release of information for DVLA register, which is basically a document the government produces, which is it's like the N165 document or something like that, which is supposed to go side by side with the V5, that people are supposed to read, right, the terms and conditions before they sign something, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, think about when you go online, right, and you register for, I don't know, a telecommunications company, or you register for Facebook, or you register for another company. You're always told to check the terms and conditions because you're signing a contract, right?
And you click on the tick box to prove that you've read them.
And how many do? How many people do? Yeah. That's the problem, right? We are our own enemy half the time, you know. So anyway, so it says the DVLA's vehicle register is maintained primarily to identify vehicles used on public roads, i.e. the registration, to assist law enforcement, i.e. to catch people who aren't paying taxes and insurance and so forth, and the collection of taxes, and to facilitate improved road safety. That's what they do, right? That's their job, right? That's what they claim to do, right? It also goes on to say, and this is really interesting, the right to process the data is either contained in a statute, in common law, or other prerogative powers of the Crown. So basically, we're talking constitutional language now. So I've sent a freedom of information request. I'd hope to get it back before the show. I haven't got it back. I'm just asking them to sort of expand on what cases are they using in common law and what prerogative powers of the Crown are they using. Because we're talking about Constitution, and as we'll get into later, I hope, the whole purpose of Constitution is to protect our civil liberties and spiritual liberties, right? And that says that very specifically in the Constitution, right? So you ask yourself, well, if the Constitution is there to protect my civil liberties and responsibilities, spiritual rights, why are they being taken away by the state? Well, I mean, we're either talking about a system or we're talking about the people that govern the system. The system, I think, is not a bad system, not perfect, not a bad system. The problem is we have people in government who are governing that system incorrectly for their own gain, right? So these are very clever people, and they're thinking to themselves, wow, we've got this Constitution which protects everyone's civil liberties and rights. How are we going to stop that? Because we can't just dismantle the Constitution, although there are some people in office who are having a very good go at the moment, right? So what they do is they create these positions, either driver or keeper or whatever, and then they invite people to sign them.
Yeah.
And effectively, that's what people do, right? The interesting thing, I think, is people say, oh, yeah, but that's because I'm forced to do. And I always say, did you contest that? Did you challenge that? And pretty much 99% of the time, people say, well, no, I didn't. I didn't think I could. Well, that's the problem, is that these things are being put in front of us and we're not challenging them, right? We're not. We're just accepting them and just going along with it. And as a result, we're losing our responsibilities. A great president once said, an American president said, people who give away their freedoms for security deserve neither, right?
Exactly.
I can't remember who that was. I remember Franklin or someone. I can't remember. And
I think that's my wife to go and look at the fridge magnet on the fridge. I think we've got that on the fridge in our kitchen, so I may have it texted to me in a moment.
Well, let's hope so. I hope so, because it's a really good quote.
Research workers everywhere, I'll tell you.
It's a really good quote. So with this in mind, and with my own experiences, which if you want we can get into later, because I think my experiences show a lot of what was going on in the court, the fact that we really do have that right to travel. They really don't have a way to contest that, and the only way they can do that is to refuse you access to your own trial, which is what happened to me. I just wanted to, a lot of the confusion I think is coming along because people are looking at the wordplay, as you mentioned before.
Yeah.
The first thing I do whenever I'm dealing with people is I always ask them what language they're talking in, right? Because obviously they may be talking in legalese, but I've never met anyone who writes to me legally who is talking legalese, because I always ask them. Because if they tell you they write in English, well, then they can't commit fraud and then just say in the courtroom, oh, well, we meant different meaning, right?
Right, got you.
So
I should just say at this point, just so that everybody knows, we're going to skip another station break. So next station break, hopefully at 8 p.m. So there we go. Oh, it's a marathon. But to carry on, Malcolm, I can't stop you in your mid-stride like I've just done. But
terrible, Alex. I've gone now. I'm just joking. So the etymology of registration is the next thing to look at. Let's look at the word themselves, right? So regis, which is Latin for kingly or king, right? And I think that's where some people are putting that together and say, well, it's the king, it's of king, means you're submitting to the king. Well, I'm not 100% sure on that. I'll go into that a little bit more later. Regis is the given name, can also be used as given name, which I think is really interesting. Because if regis is Latin for king, and it can also be used for given name, that means the name that my parents gave me, is the kingly name for myself, right? Which gives me a lot of power, which I think, again, is some people get into the occult with this, and I think, I can see their reasoning with that, right? So then look at regal, which means belonging to king, right? So now we're starting to feel a bit like, well, maybe this is right, yeah? When you look at register, right? Latin for register, right, which means list or matters recorded, right? And things start to make a little bit more sense there. It makes sense to have a list of things that are matters and that are recorded, because how else can government competently operate if they don't know who they're operating for and how many people they're operating for, or what the demographic is, or how many people that need this, And if you look at when we register for things like online or any other thing, we're not transferring ownership. We're signing contracts. It tells us on the form. It says, go read the terms and conditions. Everything we sign has a terms and conditions attached to it, because everything we sign is effectively an agreement. That's effectively what it is. Yep. So going back to the document, going back to the V5. So we're registering as the registered keeper. That's the title that the government has created. They've created this new title. Yeah? The title is just a name, right? They created this new name which has a set of privileges and duties attached to it. Now, I think if the public knew what their rights were, I think people would laugh at that and say, do you know what? I don't want to be the registered keeper, because I know as the owner of the vehicle, I know that I've got all my rights, all my God-given rights, my inalienable rights are already attached to me. I don't need to be a registered keeper. So that's a little trick on their part, right? But if it was about transferring ownership, right, I would expect to see a bill of sale. I would expect to see evidence of a sale. I would expect to see a value attached to it. I'd expect to see a signature from the buyer. Now, there is a signature from a buyer in there, right? From one private person to another private person. But there's no signature from the state, like to say that we've had a transfer. And I've not received any money for my vehicle. And also, if it's not my vehicle, how comes I can resell it and sell it on and sell it on and sell it on, and someone else can sell it on and so forth, right? If we didn't own it. I mean, I just don't think the state is stupid enough to commit that high level of fraud, because they don't need to. All they need to do is create a title, get some privileges and duties attached to it, and get people to sign up for that. And automatically, they've waived away their rights, like to operate on the road freely. Those rights are on the shelf, should we say. I don't think anyone can ever lose their rights. I don't think that's ever possible, because they're given to us at birth, right, from something much greater than us, I think.
So, and I mean, something more basic just occurred to me, mainly because of the number of things I've had to pay for on the car in the last few weeks. If we didn't own the vehicle anymore, then I'm sure we could send the bills for various repairs to the owner who
would be the state.
Yeah,
exactly.
So,
well, try doing that and get back to me and see how you get on with that, because I'd be interested. No, I'm not being funny. I'm serious. I'd be interested.
I'm just thinking that could be a nice, interesting little bill to put out, especially if I start putting my usual interest rates on if I don't pay within 28 days.
Well, the fact of the matter is, if my vehicle had been owned, how come I deregistered? Right, and the reason I know I deregistered, I never had confirmation, because we went back and forth. The best I got was your correspondence has been noted. There'll be no further contact from us. Right, that's the best I'm going to get, I think. But when I went through the whole process of being arrested, and again that was all funny because I got arrested for a common law crime of theft, and as soon as I got back to the station, it was dropped. And the reason I got arrested for common law crime of theft is because even though I told them I've got no driving license, no insurance, no tax, no MOT, they couldn't arrest me for that. Why couldn't they arrest me for that? You'd think that would be an arrestable offence, right? Well, they've got no jurisdiction at that point, have they? So the best they can do me for is theft, right? And so that's what they did. They took me back, and then they processed me. Then they realised that I've got a birth certificate and that I have a title from the Crown. They can then attach that to an existing licence, and then bang, away we go. But I said to the desk sergeant, and it was funny because his eyes popped out his head. We were going through the charges, and I was like, "Oh, you left the charge off?" And he was like, "What do you mean?" I said, "The charge for no tax on the vehicle." And his eyes popped out as if to say, "Why do you want me to add charges?" And I'm like, "Well, I want to contest it in court. That's why I'm doing this. I'm not doing this for fun, like, not being banged up and stuff for fun." And he said to me, "That's a civil matter between you and the DVLA, and they will chase you for the tax." And do you know what? Nearly 4 years on, they have never chased me for the tax. I've never had a single letter. I swear oath to you now, never had a single letter from them, ever. So that tells me that I deregistered. I also have a very, very close friend of mine, and we were doing a lot of things together, and he deregistered his business, right, from whoever HMRC, right?
Yep. Yep.
And about 3 years later, he had a letter from HMRC, and they said, "Oh, hey, I'm not going to use his name, but such and such. You haven't filled in a tax return. You haven't claimed, benefits. You haven't done anything in 3 years. Like, what's going on?" And he wrote back saying, "I'm not registered to deal with you." Right? So he sent that back. It was literally a simple line. They wrote back to him saying, "No, it's a legal requirement. You have to blah 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 blah." And he wrote back, same sentence, "I'm not registered to deal with you," and that was it. And I asked him just when I saw him last night, I asked him, "Have they chased you up for that?" And that was probably same time we were doing this stuff together. So that was 4 years ago. He's never received anything from the tax office. So if the tax office owned him, or the tax office owned his business, or the DVLA owned my car, how come we were able to deregister?
Yeah.
Simple matter. Simple matter is we just are registering for things that we perhaps shouldn't. In fact, I was going to show a second slide. I'll just show it quickly now. Mike, can I show the second slide, the blurb? Is that all right? I know this is. I'm going to read it out, obviously, because I appreciate that there are many listeners on radio.
Indeed.
But I just wanted to catch this because I saw this in the paper when I was looking through the news. Okay, and this is basically an article about TV licenses, and the clerk is talking to someone who is having trouble with TV license, and he says, and I quote this from the article, "The court clerk explains how she should go about getting her address deregistered so that she doesn't get any more letters." Right? That's the point, is that when we register for something, we're registering for a service, which is a privilege, right? Your service from Facebook is a privilege. Your service from the DVLA, the Protect on the Road, it's a protection racket, basically. It's a service, right? And we're paying duties for that. We're paying tax for that, or we're paying whatever. And we're registering for that. And the simple matter is, I've got 2 cases in front of me, mine and my friends, where we both deregistered. We've had nothing from them in years, right? So I think that really we're not talking about ownership. We're talking about control. There are lots of forms of control, and this is control under the form of contract, what I would say.
Yeah. So into contract law straight off.
Well, yeah.
Interesting you should mention the TV license thing there, because I think it was UK Column News this lunchtime which was talking about, or it might have been yesterday, I think, in terms of the gentleman who had contested paying his license fee on the basis that the BBC had lied about 9/11. And that was in terms of World Trade Center Building 7 collapsing, and the BBC announcing that it had collapsed 22 minutes before it actually happened. And the female reporter in vision was there standing in front of World Trade Center 7, which could be seen over her shoulder, her reporting it had collapsed and got down and was no longer there, and there it was over her shoulder. Infamous footage. And when that was presented to a court, and again, it seems with your leave or by your leave, the judge went, "Well, yes, absolutely, you're quite right. They have lied about the context of 9/11, and that footage is proof. So you don't have to pay your licence fee because you are correctly saying that the BBC is in breach of its charter." And that's the sort of thing which, again, is an empowering thing, because straight away, on 2 levels, straight away, if you can show the BBC is in breach of its charter, it is in breach of its contract with you as a viewer. And not only that, 9/11, can we say inside job at this time? And I don't know. But it shows there was obviously precognition that a building was going to collapse.
Yeah. But at the same time, that same person who then writes and either claims something back or refuses to take another license shouldn't then go and watch BBC services, because that's I think that's kind of counterproductive. Like, you know,
Yeah.
someone mentioned in the chat room just a minute ago, I noticed that they contracted with the UK column, and that's absolutely true. We're providing you a service, and you, in return for a little bit of monetary support or whatever it is you're giving to us or whatever, and that's the relationship. If we then do something or say something or take an action that you dislike, you have, I think personally, Mike's going to kill me now, but I think you have every right to scrap that contract. But then don't come and watch our show, because you know that's our service. That's what we do. We provide a service in response for this. The BBC provide a service in response. Well, do they provide a service? I don't know. Should people even be watching the BBC? I don't even know. So I don't. So you know, but. Yeah, so I think people have got remain in honour is what I'm saying. You can't we can't be taking something and not, if there's a duty attached to that, we can't then try and get the best of both worlds. I think that's wrong.
Well, that's it. If you are not going to subscribe to the BBC service, as the license basically is, it is another form of subscription, whether they like that word or not, then don't watch it. If you're not going to pay for it, don't watch it. Besides which, certainly if you're making the case that you can't trust anything they say, why are you watching it?
Yeah, indeed.
It's self-defeating. It really, really is.
Yeah.
I think it might be an idea to get a few comments, because we're cancelling half these station breaks. We're seeing less of Lexi, and I know most people would like to see.
I don't want to get
more
you sacked, Alex.
So there we go. Over to Lexi.
Hello, everybody. So I've got a message from Sean in Bicester, and he says speed camera vans. The speed awareness course costs £95 and is conducted by the AA, not the police. They just see drivers as a revenue stream, and they're not there for safety. And are the people in the vans even police officers? The one that was wearing a T-shirt and jeans that got out to eat a bacon sarnie did not look like one to me. He was nabbing motorists that were going 24 miles an hour in Oxford's 20 zones.
I need to remind people about... this is an old story, I know, but for those just tuning in, that resonates with it. King's Dyke on the road to Whittlesea, the A605, there is a railway crossing there. And every now and then you get a vehicle parked up with its camera pointing at the people, waiting to get the opportunity to zap you and get a reason to take you to court. And tell you what, if you pay real quick, then we'll give you a discount so you don't have to pay so much. You know what I'm talking about. And my wife was zapped by them, and this van has multiple logos on it.